The home of Hendersonville, North Carolina. Sideline reporter, found out something new. College football enthusiast himself. And one of the greatest voices in the history of all sports, man. Can't thank this man enough for hopping on with us. Boxing legend, Jim Lampley, joins the show. Jim.
How you doing, Jim?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Appreciate you joining us, brother. I can't thank you enough.
Welcoming applause. That's very kind.
Hey, we got a common friend, Steve Kim and Mario Lopez, who comes on our show all the time. So Steve he wishes he could be on here with us, but he comes on our show every Tuesday, Thursday. So and I watch you on their show, the 3 Knockdown Rule, quite often. So appreciate you joining us, taking a few minutes out your day, man. Can't thank you enough. I got to ask you a question. Steve Kim asked me. I did not know. You started off on the football sideline. What's up with that story?
Well, in 1972, at the Munich Olympics, when they were attempting to cover the captivity of Israeli athletes by Palestinian terrorists, ABC Sports, in responding to pressure on the control room from 2 reporters, Howard Cosell and Peter Jennings, learned things about radio frequency cameras and microphones that they had not known before that time. They learned that the signals would go over concrete barriers or go around metal walls, etc. And eventually, once all of that was over, and they went back to New York, ABC convened a meeting of the engineering division, the sports division, and the news division to determine, okay, now that we know all this stuff about wireless cameras and microphones, what can we do with it? And one idea, probably the most visible idea that was adopted, was we could put a reporter on the sideline of a football game. And that led to a national talent hunt that went on in the spring of 1974, in which they interviewed 432 college age or close to college age students to anoint somebody to be the first person to stand on the sideline with a camera and a microphone. They wound up choosing 2 of us, me and a young man from Stanford named Don Tollefson. And together we pioneered that adventure in the fall of 1974, which was coincidentally the same year that Keith Jackson replaced Chris Schenkel as the play-by-play voice of college football. So there were several changes on the college football telecast that year. But by the second year, even though they had said that they were going to conduct a talent hunt every year and there would be a new guinea pig for the role every year, etc., that, of course, didn't happen. By the second year, they had sent Don Tollefson to a local station in Philadelphia, the best local station in the country for local news ratings, WPVI, and I was back not terribly happy about it for a second year on the sidelines. And then I did a third year on the sidelines until I finally screamed and yelled loud enough to get something else to do. And that became 4th regional college football games, doing play-by-play and learning how to do play-by-play for all the crazy wide world of sports segments, the wrist wrestling, the log jumping, the barrel rolling, et cetera, all the senior announcers, Hall of Fame types who were ahead of me in the rotation had all gone and done those events once or twice. I was the person who wound up having to do them 4 times, 5 times, Hayward, Wisconsin for the wrist wrestling, Central Islip, New York for the the demolition derby, Holbrook, Illinois for the motorcycles on ice. I did all that stuff for years until I screamed and yelled about that enough to begin to get better wide world assignments and go forward with my career.
Wow. That's amazing, man, what you've done. I got to ask one more question before Big Smitty here jumps in. I got to ask you your time with Bryant Gumbel. I just want to get your take on him, man, the legendary Real Sports that I grew up watching you guys on. Unfortunately, he had the same thing my father passed from, so I know a little bit about it. But what's your biggest takeaway from having worked with Bryant for so long and having the great relationship with Bryant Gumbel?
Good guy, very smart guy. I think that Bryant and I, in some ways, had similar backgrounds and similar skills. There was a moment in time when I was working at HBO, and I thought that I might be headed toward becoming the host of the new magazine show they were going to put on the air called Real Sports. I wound up mismanaging my personal life in a couple of ways that were negative for me and deleterious to my public image. And it wasn't surprising to me that they reached out instead and brought Bryant in to host the show. And with Bryant hosting Real Sports and giving it his status and his imprimatur, so to speak, the show did well in the first few years. And I won at least 2 Emmys for Best Sports Reporting in my role as the, quote, senior reporter for the show. It was interesting that I was the senior reporter for the show because among the other reporters were Frank DeFord of Sports Illustrated, who had been around, 30 years more than me. And there were some others who were also older, but they needed a title to kind of soothe my feelings for having been passed over as the host, and that became senior reporter. Bryant did a great job. We were friendly all along. I hope we're still friendly to this day, but I haven't seen him in quite a while.
No doubt.
Oh, for sure. Amazing story, amazing journey. Just hearing that, you literally covered it all. I want to ask specifically, obviously a lot of people know you for, as the boxing, anchor and just specialist there. How did you get your foot in the door specifically on the boxing side?
Well, it's a great question. And if you read the book, then you know the answer. I was assigned to boxing at ABC Sports in 1986 and then going into 1987 by a newly installed sports division chieftain, manager of the sports division, a guy named Dennis Swanson, who replaced the legendary Roone Arledge, the man who had architected my career. And Dennis Swanson arrived at ABC Sports with one basic predilection, which was, who is Jim Lampley and how do I get rid of him? How do I get this salary off of my budget? How do I get these contract guarantees for certain exposures in the future eliminated? And he thought that a good way to get rid of me would be to embarrass me by assigning me to boxing. He thought that it was a sport where I wouldn't fit, that my style would be out of place relative to boxing, and also that the audience would naturally see me as the successor to Howard Cosell. And I had already suffered career damage from having been Cosell's successor doing the halftime highlights on Monday Night Football. That was not a good gig for me because, of course, for Howard, it was a burlesque act and entirely personal for him. So that had damaged me. And Swanson, thinking that he could embarrass me enough to get rid of me, assigned me to boxing. He didn't pay much attention to the fact that the division had just signed a get-acquainted, look-see contract with a 19-year-old heavyweight from New York whose name was Mike Tyson. And therefore, the first 4 or 5 boxing shows that I did on ABC Sports were all Mike Tyson fights. And I became identified with Mike, and one thing led to another over the course of the next year or so. And eventually I did leave ABC Sports to get away from Dennis Swanson. And the first contract I signed after that was with HBO to host their boxing.
Nice. Wow. I can't have a better person on it to ask this question. You're a North Carolina alum. I got to ask you, what's your take on what's happening there in North Carolina with the football program? Being a basketball school, obviously Mac Brown took over there and had him some pretty good years, retired actually, and now Bill Belichick, a legend, maybe the GOAT of all GOATs in football, has taken that job. What are you hearing, or what are you excited to watch for this year in North Carolina under his new tutelage?
Well, there are 2 potential points of view here. One, football's football. A guy who won 6 Super Bowls in the NFL is obviously going to be a great college football coach, and North Carolina will win and win more gloriously than has been the case in the past. That's one way to look at it. 2, college football and professional football are 2 different animals. And the skills that it takes to be a great professional football coach are not necessarily automatically going to translate into college football. And there may be institutional obstacles here that Belichick hasn't observed or thought about before taking the job. I know why he took the job. His father was on the coaching staff here in Chapel Hill when he was a small boy, 4, 5, 6 years old. I defy anybody to live in Chapel Hill for a few years at any period in their lives. I don't care what time it is. But once you've lived here, it is not something that is easily washed out. You don't forget it. You tend to develop a romantic attachment. That's why I'm living in Chapel Hill right now. And I think with all the changes in his life right now and the new things that he's dealing with in his life right now, there was a comfort zone attached to coming back to Chapel Hill where he had grown up long ago. And by the way, he touched on it in the first news conference, and he won that news conference big time when he said, "My parents always told me that the first thing I ever learned to say out loud was beat Duke." So he gets it. Now let's see what happens.
No doubt.
I love it. I love that. One thing I want to ask you, and this actually came from Steve Kim earlier, was you were back. You covered the big fight there in New York there, and with the big card here we had of Roley upsetting Ryan Garcia. We had Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, but a lot of fans were kind of left disappointed and kind of the results of the fight. I just want to hear from your perspective. Did you kind of feel the same? What was your thoughts on that overall card?
There were stars on the card, and there's a persistent perception among people who are relative novices in boxing that if you put two great star-named fighters into the ring, that's automatically a good fight. That's not true. As you guys know, styles make fights. Yes, and if you want to put together spectator attraction fights, you have to be certain that the styles mesh in such a way that you are going to have fireworks. And basically, one tenet of that is don't put two counterpunchers in against each other. They're going to stand and stare at each other or move around the ring and stare at each other. And we actually saw a version of that the day after the Times Square card when William Skull ran and Canelo chased him. And Canelo wasn't really adept at chasing him down and closing off the ring and putting him into a corner because Canelo's a counterpuncher too. That's his basic nature. So you've got to be really cognizant of how to make the right kinds of fights. For whatever reason, New York was a competitive and entertainment miss. A lot of people said, I'm gratified to say that a lot of people said the best thing about the night was that Jim Lampley was back calling blow by blow. But a friend of mine made a great observation when he said it's really hard to call blow by blow when there aren't many blows and there weren't many landed blows. So I did the best I could with that. I hope that my employer, Turkey Al Sheikh, was happy enough, and I look forward to going forward with it if, in fact, that enterprise is going to continue.
I got to ask you real quick, what's your take on the Canelo Crawford possible matchup, and what do you think about this? And if it is on, who's calling that fight?
Well, we don't know who's calling that fight. So we'll find out later who's calling that fight.
Do you want to? Do you want to? Would you?
Oh, sure. No, I mean, look, I have been a big curator of both fighters' careers. Both of them were HBO stars back when I was calling fights at HBO. Both of them are people I have stayed in touch with and have seen over the years since HBO finished. Yeah. So I absolutely love the fight. They are the two most proven and skilled boxing competitors on the planet outside of Alexander Usyk, heavyweight, and now Inoue, featherweight. And so they're in the middle between them. And it could become an interesting style matchup if Crawford chooses to attack. Somebody's going to have to attack to make a fight. But Crawford can do either. He can attack or he can counterpunch. He can do both. He's multi-skilled. And I think that Crawford understands that he's going to have to go after Canelo to make a fire in that fight. One of the great lines that I love was I asked my favorite boxing writer, Tom Hauser, pretty much the dean of American boxing writers now, writing for The Guardian at this moment. I asked Hauser, do you think that Terence Crawford can get a win over Canelo Alvarez? And Hauser looked at me and said, did Ray Leonard get a decision over Marvin Hagler? And the answer is yes, he did. And the logical precept is, if Ray Leonard could get a decision over Marvin Hagler, there's no reason that Terence Crawford, more active, more vibrant, might get a decision over Canelo Alvarez. It's possible. And they're both great fighters, and I'm really looking forward to the fight.
Hope you get that nod. I would love to hear your voice call that one.
No, we both would. I mean, I feel like it has to happen. Legendary fight, legendary, analysts here and anchors. I mean, it only makes sense. Let me ask you this. In the event that Terence Crawford does go out there and win, what does that do for his legacy?
Well, it's enormous. I mean, that would be the biggest scalp on his resume. And, of course, because of the size differential, Crawford now going up 14 pounds in weight. If you look at the last year or so, it's really going up 21 pounds in weight. Because of the size differential, almost nobody favors Terence. So if he makes it a great fight, he's probably, in the eyes of the public, a winner already. If he happens to get a decision or somehow hurt Canelo, which nobody's ever been able to do, by the way, that would be a tremendous feather in his cap. Canelo Alvarez has the best punch resistance, pound for pound, of anybody in boxing. In all of his long career, he has only suffered one official knockdown. And that was a moment when he got knocked back into the ropes by a shot to the upper chest, and he bounced off the ropes and lost his balance and fell down. The referee very technically ruled that the ropes had held him up, so that became officially a knockdown. Nobody has ever put Canelo on his back or laid him out on the canvas. And I believe that's because his legs are the strongest legs in boxing. It's also what gives him his body punching power. So Canelo is the logical favorite in the fight. But can Crawford win it? Oh, heck yes. Crawford is one of the most resourceful and competitively mean-spirited in a productive way fighters that I've ever known.
Interesting. I got to ask you a question. I got a couple quick ones for you. I want to hold you. I can't thank you enough. That history behind your head right there is probably, I don't know, maybe the greatest history lesson for a lot of the chat in here that's watching. What's your favorite all-time, either you called it or saw it, fight?
Well, I called both the Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward trilogy, pick any of the three fights, especially 1 and 2. And I called the entire Marco Antonio Barrera versus Eric Morales tragedy, or trilogy, I should say. Yeah. Pick any of the three fights, especially the first. And those 6 fights stand out very starkly in my resume and my memory. And then if you want to go to heavyweight, I called the entire Riddick Bowe versus Evander Holyfield trilogy. So I've been very blessed and very gifted in terms of the fights that I've seen and the fights that I've called. There are way too many great ones to isolate any one or two and say those are the most memorable. Watching my buddy George Foreman knock out Michael Moore to win the heavyweight championship at age 45, that created the title for my book. And watching Buster Douglas score what is still seen as the biggest upset in boxing history, beating Mike Tyson February 10, 1990 in Tokyo. These are all precious memories that belong to me because I had the gift of being HBO's blow-by-blow commentator and calling those fights.
No,
legendary.
That's amazing. And let me ask you this, and this one might be tough. You've covered, watched so many fighters. Is there one fighter that just stands out for you? Like, who's the greatest fighter that you've got the chance to watch yourself?
Well, I started out doing expert commentary with Ray Leonard and covered some of his fights. the greatest fighter that I ever got to watch. I mean, hey, this is not an original answer, but Cassius Clay was my boyhood hero coming out of the Rome Olympics in 1960, and he remained my hero pretty much all the way through his career until Larry Holmes erased him from the heavyweight contender picture in 1980. But for a variety of reasons, I believe Muhammad Ali was the #1 heavyweight of all time, ahead of Joe Louis, ahead of a lot of other great fighters. And so a lot of my most vivid and cherished memories have to do with Muhammad Ali. Did you guys read the book by any chance?
No, I haven't read it yet. No,
right.
Steve Kim was reading it, and he told me
showed us the book, so we got to get it. Yes,
he said he made it funny.
There's an anecdote in the book that everyone should check out. All of your listeners. I'm not going to give it away, but there's an anecdote in the book about what I call the greatest line of boxing commentary ever issued during a fight. And it isn't something that I said. And it isn't something that Merchant said, or that Max said, or that Roy said, or that Emmanuel said, or Foreman said. It is a line delivered by a highly counterintuitive source. And it took place during the latter stages of Muhammad Ali against Larry Holmes in 1980. And now, if you want to find out what it was, read my book.
Oh, yeah. Steve Kim showed the book before he got off because he said that was Mario Lopez's copy, that he had to go read it right away. He was making a joke. But, yeah, Mario, I know you had something to say. Mario better start reading it.
Well, it's 272 pages. And a couple of people, probably exaggerating, have told me that they read it in one sitting. So either it's simple-minded and very easy to read, or a couple of people have gotten engaged enough that they read it all the way through in one sitting, or at least they feel comfortable making that claim. I'm very flattered by the response to the book because almost everybody who reaches out to me says, "Oh my gosh, what a remarkable book." And I hope that's most people's response. The single thing I most tried to do was to be honest. I didn't try to sugarcoat my career. I didn't try to hide the bad decisions I had made. I didn't try to take credit for all of the amazing and wonderful things that happened to me, because a lot of it was luck, circumstance, being in the right place at the right time, such as being chosen from a 432 candidate talent hunt to be the first college football sideline reporter when I didn't fit any of the credentials they had billed as being what they were looking for in the talent hunt.
No doubt. I'm in similar. I wrote a book too that happened to be a bestseller that is really quick and short. And I was told the same thing. Oh, I read that shit in one sitting. I'm like, all right, we'll see. We'll see. But it's interesting. I'd rather get short to the point too, so I can see it. Last thing I got, Jim, for you real quick. I just wanted to ask you, like, there's George Foreman passed, unfortunately. We had Bernstein on and talked about it. I know that was one of your covers, and I know the legend of him. What was your biggest takeaway from George and everything that he meant?
Well, first of all, at the beginning when he came to work at HBO Sports, I think he was a little bit skeptical about me. And then over time, he watched the way I worked, and he sat on the air and worked with me. And I'm pleased to say that eventually we had a relationship bonded mutual respect. Now, going forward to what's happened recently, my book was published April 15. George died March 21. They kept his condition very secret and hidden. I had no idea that he was on the verge of leaving us. And again, he leaves just a few weeks before the publication of the book. The title comes from my call of his win over Michael Moore to become a 45-year-old heavyweight champion. The first thing you read in the book is the prologue. And the prologue is about the 19-year-old me watching the 19-year-old him win his Olympic gold medal in Mexico City. The cover blurb that he wrote for the back of the book, and he wrote it himself, may have been one of his last public acts. There are so many things that connect me to George through the book that it's stunning that all this has happened within the time frame within which it's happening. It deeply grieves me. It reminds me of what a great influence he was on me. He taught me some things about boxing, but even more, he taught me some things about life. And it's interesting. He used to always call me young man when he would give me a meaningful lesson about life, which he did. He would say, young man this and young man that. And I would always at some point stop him and say, George, you're born on January 12, 1949. I'm born on April 8, 1949. There are fewer than 3 months separating us. I'm not that much younger than you. And
Right.
every time he would say, yeah, but you're such a young man. And that was the end of that. You couldn't argue with George. He was a very strong-minded man.
No doubt. Legend, man. Rest in peace. Legendary
peace.
guy. Smitty got one last question. We'll get you out of here, Jim. I can't thank you enough, man.
Yes, yeah, no, yes, sir. Again, thank you so much. Another legend we just heard in the boxing news is making a comeback. Manny Pacquiao is coming out of retirement to fight again. I just want to get your just response. Are you as shocked as I am that he's coming out, or did you kind of almost expect this?
I'm not shocked. I'm never shocked. Okay. A long time ago, way back in the late 80s, when I was working with Ray Leonard at HBO. And we all know what happened with Leonard at the end of his career when he tried to retire, came back, tried to retire, came back. And I asked him a simple question one day. I said, Ray, why can't you quit? And he looked at me, great friend, very thoughtful man. And he said, Jim, I have tried owning restaurants and eating in restaurants. I have tried dancing in nightclubs and owning nightclubs. I've tried every kind of thrill, direct and vicarious, that you can pursue in adult life. Nothing will ever match the thrill of stepping out off that stool into the center of the ring, sweat gleaming on your chest, clad only in those trunks and a cup, getting ready to face off against another man and try to prove that you are more man than him. Nothing touches that. And I completely got that. It made all the sense in the world to me. So Manny Pacquiao, no matter how many glorious homes he buys in the Philippines, no matter how many trips around the world he takes with his wife, Jinky, no matter how many spectacular artifacts and pieces of furniture he buys for her, he's never going to have another thrill like the thrills that he had in the ring. And that's what's missing. It's always the same for all of these guys. By the way, that was Foreman too. He could not stand to be away without getting one more chance to erase the stain of Zaire. And he went into the ring against Moorer wearing the same trunks that he had worn in Zaire. And on the way to the ring, on the ring walk, he recited to himself, gently but out loud, the lyrics to The Impossible Dream from the Man of La Mancha, to dream the impossible dream, et cetera, et cetera. He knew all the lyrics, and he recited them on the way to the ring. So, again, Manny coming back, that's about as predictable as anything else could be. Arturo Gatti's gone, so Mickey Ward can't come back against Arturo. That's probably a good thing. But at the end of the day, sometime within the next year or so, Canelo's going to announce his retirement. And then we'll see. We'll see whether a Mexican fighter of that eminence, from that culture, having accomplished all the things that he has accomplished, can walk away. It's not easy.
Unbelievable stuff, man. Go purchase. It happened right now. A lot of people in the chat are purchasing as we speak. So love the book. Make sure that you guys go get that. And Jim, I can't thank you enough for jumping on here with us and taking some time, man. You're a legend, and I wish you and the family success and good health and everything else, man. I appreciate you coming on here.
I like the crawl at the bottom. That's good stuff. Thank you very much for having me here. I hope maybe a couple people will buy a copy if it happens. It's not overwhelmingly expensive. And I had a lot of fun with you guys here today.
No, I appreciate you. I look forward to hopefully you get that. Hopefully you get that fight, Jim. Hopefully I want to hear you call that fight, and it would be great to hear. So appreciate you, and good luck to everything. I thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, Jim.